Hello friends, my name is Steve, this is Steve Talks Books. Today, we'll be talking about The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. The Grace of Kings is a fantasy novel, or also described as silk punk. It's written by Ken Liu, and it's the first book in the Dandelion Dynasty series. Dandelion Dynasty series. Okay, got it that time. So, this novel explores power, empires, friendship, and how it can all change, whether it's overnight or through generations. It also explores power, what it does to you, how to handle it, are the people who are the best in battle, the best people to be ruling or to be leading. Once you get into that mindset of battle and violence, is that the best person to rule, even if they led you to that place and they're able to overtake an empire? Is that the person that is best suited to rule, or those same approaches, that same mindset? How does that change the future? It does very, very thought provoking on what happens. And I love when fantasy novels especially explore what happens after these battles, because I think a lot of fantasy is focused a lot on battles and fights. And it's not very often that they explore what happens after. How do you rule? How do you lead? What are the best ways? Do you end up being worse than what you overthrew to start with? To someone who started out as a slave or someone in the lower levels of society, when that's all they've known their whole lives, and when they are put in that position where they can make those decisions, how do you handle that? What do you do? And also all the sacrifices that happen during transitional periods like this, all the different sacrifices that you don't really know a whole lot about unless you're involved in the situation firsthand. Will history remember those people? Will they ever even know the sacrifices they made? Very, very left me with a lot to think about, the different approaches, what happens. And I love that this culture is explored that you usually don't see in very many fantasy books. So it was a big change of pace with that too. I think that was how the different ways that characters interact and the way that society works was different than other fantasy books I normally read. And you add in some meddling gods, and it adds a whole new layer of intrigue and of what really is going on, and what's being, because the gods tend to put people on a certain path, and they try to manipulate and kind of pull the strings. So it's great to see that, have that other layer, because you never know who in the story is trying to manipulate the way that things are going, or if they are just a random person, a random beggar, or a random person just on the street. So you always wonder, is this person, who is this person? Is this a real person or is it not? So I think that was all very fun to try and predict when someone is just a random person or when they're trying to manipulate the other characters. So let's start with what I liked. Of course, I did mention already the way that the book explores what happens after power is taken, how that transitional period works. Sometimes it takes generations to change things. And also, if you move up with other people and you become you get a powerful position, do you trust the people that came up with you? Do you trust the people that have helped you the entire time? Because if they helped you and they think they can do it better, can you necessarily trust them? If you've come up all the way and all the different decisions you have to make on your way to the top, on your way to that, on that path, how does that change you? How different do you become from the person that, with these good intentions at the beginning, is it still the best intentions after? I love that exploration of power and this period of time where power is being passed back and forth. Who best to rule, and are you going to fight and battle and kill people and make these really, really tough decisions, get to that position, and then turn it over to someone else and say, here, you rule? Or are you going to want to do it yourself because you got to that point? If you were the main person or the main group that got everyone to that point, are you just going to hand it over? The world is almost a character in and of itself. And this world is called Dara, and it feels like a character. It feels like a part of the character list, because it's so breathed in and lived in, and it becomes a whole nother character. Speaking of characters, all the characters it's like all of them, and none of them are good or evil, and they all make decisions you won't agree with, or at least you'll question and wonder if it's the best decision. Their evolution from beginning to end was very, very fascinating. I love seeing that evolution of the character, how they start out and what they end up being at the end. But you understand why they become these people after you take this long journey with them. And those of you who know me know that I really love surprising events and deaths. And in this one, we have a mix of both. We have some really some events and some deaths that really surprised me, that got to me, because I had some expectations and some theories, and thought I knew where it was going, and didn't go that direction. Now let's talk about what I didn't like. There are a ton of characters, and with a ton of characters, you also have a ton of character names. And it was difficult at times, especially in the first half, for me to keep up with who's who, which character is which. And as they get into a more powerful position, sometimes their names change. So you get used to one character being called one thing, and then they're referred to as someone else or someone else. So it took me a while to get into the groove and to know who's who. By the middle, maybe over halfway, you start to really, well, for me anyway, I started to really know who's who, but it took a while to get through that. And I have heard a lot of people say that the first half is very info dumpy, that they dump a lot on you. There is a lot, but I never felt, like it was too much. I never felt like it was a big dump truck coming and dumping it. There was a lot, but I think it rolled out at a pretty decent pace, and it starts out pretty quick. It doesn't waste a whole lot of time getting you into the story. Now, this is a minor gripe, but it falls under the things that I didn't like. There are some periods in the book that are very, very battle heavy. And the battles, we don't get a play-by-play of what happens. It's more of an overview of the events that are happening. And at some points, it does read like a history book. And sometimes that can be a little bit dry. But I will say that the overview that we get from the battles adds to that wide scope, and adds to that the feeling that you're this kind of story that you're reading, because you're not getting a play-by-play. You're getting it from really who the characters that we're following. They're the ones giving orders and kind of strategies and things like that. So I think in that sense, it did add to the scope of the story. So my overall thoughts was, this is a book that I really, really enjoyed. I love the characters, and I love how they contrast against each other. Some of them have very different views on how things should be done. And I like that contrast of having these 2 or 3 or 4 different perspectives, what should be done, and ways to get to the goals that are set. To have a story with such a large scope and still have very defined and fleshed out characters isn't easy to do, but Ken Liu manages to pull it off in this one. I felt like I knew the land, I knew Dara, the world, and I really knew the characters in the story. And to do both, that's quite a feat, I think, to be able to do that. And this is one of those books that keep me wondering long after I've read it. And those are the kind of books that I really, really enjoy. And it's up to you as a reader to decide which decisions are good, which were bad, which approach you would take. And putting yourself in that position, I think, makes it even more intriguing, because you see all the different perspectives while you're reading the book, and you also see the aftermath of those decisions and how those decisions impact the world in ways that you didn't expect or wouldn't have seen before it actually happened. So I love that we were able to go with the characters and see how their decisions impacted the world, whether they're good or bad. I think it really added to the story and added to the intrigue and the questions you ask yourself as you're reading this one. Have you read The Grace of Kings? If you have, let me know down below what you thought of it. As always, I hope this review was helpful. I will talk to you soon.